Hello readers and writers, I'm MJ and today we're talking about autistic fiction books. I want to start this video by saying that there just are not enough autism representation in fiction books. And the representation that is there is very, very often problematic. It's written by neurotypical authors that base their representation based on stereotype. I plan on doing another video on that later in the month, so watch out for that. But today I wanted to focus on autistic books written by autistic authors that have good representation in them. They are all books that I have read, or at least partially read. I'll explain that. And so they're ones that I would definitely recommend that you pick up on Autism Acceptance Month or any time throughout the year. This is not an extensive list. There has to be more autistic books by autistic authors, but even finding them is extremely hard. It's one of the reasons why I, as an autistic author, decided to self-publish. It just seemed impossible for me to get my autistic representation books through a traditional publishing house. So please comment down any autistic fiction authors, any books with autism rep in the comments. I would love to see what books you've read, especially books by indie authors, because I would really like to feature them and read them. Start with a very popular series, but it's a very good series that I think has brought a lot of recognition to autism representation. And it is the Kiss Quotient series by Helen Hong. This is a 3-book series, but I think it's worth going through each book slightly individually. The first book is The Kiss Quotient. This is probably my least favorite book of the series, only because it's the spiciest of the books. So if you really like spicy romance, then this definitely is for you. It also has an economic, also has a main character that is an econ. I don't know. She works with data, with economy stuff. Obviously, I can't speak. But she works with programs that I am very familiar with as a research analyst. And I think the main character was a little bit too close to myself, beyond the fact that she's of a very high socioeconomic class. Something I've never experienced, not ever having to worry about money. And beyond that, everything else I found a little bit too familiar. And so I was able to, like, point out things that were like, yeah, that's not actually how you use that software. That and the spice are probably why this is my least favorite of the trilogy, but it's still a really excellent book. It has very amazing autism representation, and it was still a great debut novel. The second book in the series is The Bride Test, and I know this is a romance novel, but this book made me cry. So I guess I should preface this with I'm a romantic and asexual. I typically do not read romance novels. In fact, I really only pick them up if there's another representation that I want to see, such as autism. So I don't really connect with romance books per se. But I connected so much with the representation in this book and just the desire to be loved and seen as a person through autism spectrum. Not necessarily romantic love, but just in general. And so I was bawling every time I read this book. But it is amazing representation. It does also go into a lot of Vietnamese representation as well. The author did a lot of research into her own cultural heritage and put that in there, and it was really great to read that also. Then the last book in the series is The Heart Principle, and this was a great conclusion to this trilogy. I really like the main character, the male main character in this. I probably relate to him the most out of anyone in these books. Well, maybe still, I don't know. I just relate to them so much in different ways, and so that's why I really appreciate. And so it was a really great conclusion to this trilogy, and I'm really excited to see what else the author writes, even romance. So these are the Illumicrate editions, and are they not, like, amazing? Like, look at this, and this, and look. and find it. Oh, there we go. They even have ribbons. Alright, but enough about that. The next book I want to talk about is Act Your Age, Evie Brown. This is the third book in the Brown Sisters series by Talia Hibbert. I have not read the first two books in the series. I think there may be autism rep in some of them, but I'm not sure. The author is autistic, and I did pick up the third book because I knew there was autism rep in it. I only have finished half of this book. I do plan on picking it up later. Um, I think the rep is spectacular. I really love it. But I have a hard time with romance novels, and this is 100% a romance novel, and that's what it is. So, like, no shit on the book. That's what it's supposed to be. But me reading it, I have a hard time getting through that. But I really do love the rep. In the book, so I will finish at some point. The next book I want to talk about is The Many Half-Lives of Sam Sylvester. This is a YA novel with the main character who is autistic and non-binary, so it does talk about trans issues as well as autistic representation. I related extremely hard to this book, even though I am definitely older than the main character. I thought it was a very well written book, has amazing representation, and that everyone should read it. Also, the father of the main character is probably Arrow Ace, and but is probably the best father representation in literature ever. You can argue that with me, but I think most people who have read this book would agree. Best, hands down. The next book I want to talk about is The Book Eaters. I don't think the main character is specified to be autistic, but definitely I related hard to their neurodivergence, and the author is autistic. So I definitely think this is a book to be included on this list. It is a darker book, but it is an amazing read. I really, really enjoyed it. I related hard to it because ultimately it is about a parent just trying to protect their child in a world that they don't necessarily fit into. And so in that regards, amazing, amazing book. Also, another very, very beautiful edition. The next three books are all by the same author. You have The Deep. These are by River Solomon, who is a non-binary author who is autistic. And The Deep is a retelling of a song about mer people that society was started when pregnant Africans were thrown over slave ships while they were being crossed over for slave trade. So it is definitely a must-read novel, but it is both important but also and beautifully written. Yeah, absolutely. An absolute amazing short read. The main character is not specifically said as autistic. In fact, none of their books necessarily say specifically autism rep, but there's definitely enough language to say that they are autistic. Their second book is Sorrowland, and this is a speculative fiction book about a non-binary individual who escapes from a cult with their child, and it just tells about their very unique journey. It's definitely speculative fiction, so know that going into it, but I really enjoyed it, and it's a very well-written novel. And probably my favorite, well, definitely one of my favorite books of all time, In the Kindness of Ghosts. You will hear about this a lot on my channel. This is their first book, and is about a generational ship that deals with gender representation, neurodivergence, sexuality, queerness, culture, definitely a racial divide between the upper class that is white and the lower class that is black, and so it does a lot with racism, but it does it all in a science fiction scope, and I think it's enough to like distance some people who may not necessarily be able to face the racism that is in our society, um, while actually presenting it in a very clear way, because everything that's in this book is relevant for today. I just got finished rereading it, and the second read was better than the first, and I will read this novel many, many times. The first time I read it, I didn't think the main character was specifically stated as autism, but I took that back the second time I read it. They may not say the words autism, but they definitely specifically say that the main character is autistic without using the word autistic, which wouldn't be appropriate in this setting. Two fiction books that I have not yet read, but I'm reading this month, is On the Edge of Gone. I've heard a lot of really great things about this book. It is a science fiction novel by an autistic author with an autistic main character, and I'm really excited to finally pick this up. And the next book is How to Sell Your Blood and Fall in Love, which is the second book in a series, and is a vampire young adult queer romance that features autistic character in it by an autistic author. So, as always, keep reading, keep writing, and until next time.